3 weeks before our wedding, my girlfriend's brother pulled me into an empty hallway and said, "If you marry my sister, she will destroy you financially." Then he handed me a folder with my name written across the front. I had been dating Rachel for almost 4 years. Until that moment, I thought our relationship was stable. We rarely argued. We wanted the same kind of home, the same quiet lifestyle, and the same plans for children someday. Rachel was organized to the point where it sometimes made me feel careless. She tracked every expense. She planned our trips months ahead. She even kept a spreadsheet for our wedding. I saw that as a strength. My friends used to joke that Rachel had already planned the next 20 years of my life. I laughed with them because I thought it meant she was serious about us. Her brother, Daniel, was different. He was quiet around the family and usually left gatherings early. Rachel described him as irresponsible, jealous, and bitter. According to her, Daniel had borrowed money from their parents several times and blamed everyone else when things went wrong. I never questioned that version of him. At family dinners, Rachel's parents barely spoke to Daniel. If he tried to join a conversation, Rachel would interrupt or make a comment about one of his past mistakes. He would go silent and stare at his plate. I assumed he had earned their anger. But a month before the wedding, Daniel started acting strangely around me. He asked whether Rachel and I were combining our bank accounts. I said we planned to do it after the wedding. His face changed. Then he asked whether I had checked my credit report recently. I laughed and said my credit was fine because we had just been pre-approved for a mortgage. Daniel looked like he wanted to say something, but Rachel entered the room. He immediately changed the subject. That moment stayed in my head longer than it should have. A few days later, Rachel brought up the house again. She wanted us to purchase one before the wedding because she had found a property she loved. It was more expensive than we had discussed, but she kept saying we could manage it. She also wanted the mortgage only in my name. Her explanation sounded reasonable at first. She said her income history was complicated because she had changed jobs twice, but she still wanted her name on the property deed. When I asked why we couldn't wait 6 months, she became unusually upset. She said I was treating her like a temporary part of my life. That hurt because I thought marrying her was enough to show my commitment. Still, I agreed to speak with the lender again. That was when small things started feeling different. Rachel began asking for copies of my tax documents. She wanted access to my email so she could keep the wedding paperwork organized. Then she asked me to send her a photo of my driver's license because the venue supposedly needed updated identification. I sent it without thinking. 2 nights later, I woke up around 1 in the morning and found her sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop. She quickly closed the screen. She said she was checking the guest list. I asked why she needed my laptop when she had her own. She snapped at me and said she was tired of being questioned about everything. It was the first time I felt uneasy in my own apartment. The next morning, she was affectionate again. She made breakfast and acted as if nothing had happened. I almost convinced myself that wedding stress was making both of us tense. Then Daniel called me from a number I didn't recognize. He asked me to meet him without telling Rachel. I said no. At that point, I still thought he was trying to create trouble before the wedding. He didn't argue. He only said, "Check your credit before you decide I'm the problem." Then he ended the call. I checked it that evening. There were no new loans or cards under my name. I felt relieved, but one detail bothered me. Someone had made 2 recent credit inquiries. I didn't recognize either company. When I asked Rachel about them, she barely looked up from her phone. She said the mortgage broker had probably checked multiple lenders. That explanation should have ended the conversation. Instead, she added, "You don't need to contact them. I already handled it." I had never told her which companies were listed. That was the moment my fear changed shape. I called the mortgage broker the next morning. He said his office had made only 1 inquiry, and it wasn't from either of the companies on my report. I contacted both companies. One inquiry came from a personal loan provider. The other came from a furniture financing company. No accounts had been opened yet, but applications had been started. Both applications used my address, income, and personal details. They also listed Rachel's phone number. I stared at the screen for several minutes before calling Daniel. We met 2 days later at the wedding venue during the final walkthrough. Rachel was busy speaking with the coordinator, so Daniel motioned toward a hallway near the restrooms. He looked exhausted. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. If you marry my sister, she will destroy you financially. He handed me the folder. Inside were bank statements, debt collection letters, screenshots, and copies of loan applications. Some were under Daniel's name. Others were under Rachel's former boyfriend's name. Daniel explained that 5 years earlier, Rachel had used his personal information to open 2 store cards and a small personal loan. She knew his identification numbers because their mother kept family documents in an unlocked cabinet. By the time Daniel discovered the accounts, the debt had grown to nearly $20,000. Their parents paid part of it, but only after Daniel agreed not to report Rachel. Then the family told relatives that Daniel had created the debt himself. That was why everyone treated him like a failure, but the folder contained more than his records. Rachel's former boyfriend had contacted Daniel after hearing about our engagement. He said Rachel had pressured him to combine finances and apply for a home loan. When he refused, she secretly applied for credit using his information. He ended the relationship after finding the letters. Rachel had told me he cheated on her. That lie had helped me see her as the injured person in every story she told. The final page in the folder was a screenshot from a conversation between Rachel and her mother. Rachel had written that once the house was secured, she could use the equity to clear the remaining mess. Her mother replied that she needed to get everything completed before I started asking more questions. I felt cold. The expensive house wasn't about building a life together. It was a way to move her hidden debt into something connected to me. I wanted to confront her immediately, but Daniel stopped me. He said she would deny everything and accuse him of fabricating the documents. So I took photos of the folder and contacted a lawyer. I also froze my credit, changed every password, and called the companies that had received applications under my name. One application had already moved to the verification stage. The phone number belonged to Rachel, but the email address was one I had never seen. The following evening, I asked her to sit down with me. I placed copies of the applications on the table. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then she asked whether Daniel had contacted me. She didn't ask what the documents were. She already knew. Rachel immediately started attacking him. She said he had been obsessed with ruining her life for years. She claimed the records were old, misunderstood, or taken out of context. I asked one question. Why is your number on an application using my identity? She said she was trying to help us qualify for furniture before we moved. I reminded her that we hadn't purchased the house. Then I showed her the personal loan application. Her expression changed again. She stopped acting confused and became angry. She said couples helped each other with debt. She said marriage meant sharing financial problems. She accused me of caring more about money than our relationship. I asked how much she owed. She refused to answer. I asked again. Finally, she admitted it was more than $60,000. Some came from credit cards. Some came from personal loans. A large part came from online shopping and a failed business she had never mentioned. The amount hurt, but the secrecy hurt more. If she had told me early in the relationship, we could have discussed it. Instead, she tried to attach my name to her debt without my consent. I ended the engagement that night. Rachel cried, shouted, and called her parents. Her mother arrived and demanded that I return every wedding gift and reimburse them for deposits. I told them all communication would go through my lawyer. The wedding was canceled 3 weeks before the date. I lost money on the venue and several vendors, but I recovered enough to keep my finances stable. The loan applications were closed, and I placed long-term security alerts on my accounts. Rachel moved back in with her parents. A few months later, Daniel formally disputed the debts opened under his name. This time, he refused to protect the family's image. I gave him copies of everything I had received and confirmed what Rachel had attempted to do with my information. Rachel and I never spoke again. The hardest part wasn't losing the relationship. It was accepting that many of the qualities I admired in her, her planning, confidence, and attention to detail, had also helped her control what I saw. Daniel wasn't the unstable brother she warned me about. He was the person she discredited in advance because she knew he might expose her. I nearly ignored him because her version of his life was easier to accept. That folder didn't ruin my wedding. It stopped me from entering a marriage built on debt, manipulation, and a name that was about to become her next financial escape.